Welcome to After School with Mr. Van Huss. It's the snowed in edition this week, and this afternoon I get to sit down with a friend of mine that I've known for a long, long time. We first met when we were working together with the Country Music Association, and today she's an artist manager. And it's my great pleasure to have her on the show with us today. Please make welcome my friend, Christy Wilson. Welcome to After School with Mr. Van Huss. Today, I'm so happy to have an old friend here with me. Christy, how's it going?
It's going. It's a snow day in Nashville, or 16 snow days so far.
Yes.
So it's cold, but it's going. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Man, I'm so glad to have you. Me and for anybody watching, for my students that check this out, Christy and I we go way back. Back to our early to mid 20s when we were working at CMA together. And we won't even say how many years that's been at this point because it's been a while.
Don't say way back.
No, not just a little bit back.
few years, kiddos.
Yeah, just a few. So for people who may not be familiar with you, which is all my students, I'm going to let you just introduce yourself and tell us what it is that you do.
Sure. Well, I'm Christy Wilson. I am born and raised right here in Nashville. Good old native, as they say, in the Music City. Grew up in the Green Hills area, went to David Lipscomb. Well, I guess that's Lipscomb Academy now. So in the area, now I'm on the west side of town, and I've got a little girl who's 13 years old, going on 30, and raising her and working in the music business. Well, I've always been doing that, but back at it in the industry. And so, yeah, you asked me to come on here and talk a little bit about that. So there's lots to talk about.
Absolutely. Now, your dad was pretty well known in the music business.
He was. My dad was a legendary songwriter, producer, singer at once upon a time, actually. And so I was a studio brat growing up. After school, my backpack was in the studio, and I did not do my homework. Sorry, kids. I listened to the music and talked to the artists and fell into that creative world. But yeah, my dad's name was Nora Wilson, and he was a fantastic dad and father and man, and honestly, one of the most creative musical talents maybe that I've ever known.
And probably one of the absolute nicest guys in Nashville, because I remember having the great opportunity to talk to him a few times, usually when we'd be hanging out and stuff. I'm pretty sure he bought me a burger and fries at South Street or somewhere one time when I just happened to be sitting there, and all of a sudden he was like paying for my dinner, and he was a cool guy.
Oh, he adored you. And yes, I'm sure there were multiple meals on Pops back in our day.
Absolutely. So what influenced you to do what you do? Was it just growing up in the music business?
Yeah, for the most part, being around it. I think if you're a creative, you just are. It's probably already in you. I see it in my daughter a lot. But growing up around my dad, being in the studio and the artists, that was second nature to me. But there was something about the music, and that world really fit me. I wanted it from day one. And then I've got a brother, an older brother, who is also very creative, but he can draw and play every instrument, and he's artistic in all these ways, other ways too. We both love to sing, but so yeah, being around it, I was always driven. It's something I knew I always wanted to do. And so when I went off to college, I kind of took a different route, and I was a psychology major because I thought, why not go do something completely different that I love, that's not music, so I can come home, and if music falls apart, I'll have something to fall back on. But what I did was I used the psychology degree to help me deal with the people in the music industry, as I always say.
And you went to the University of Tennessee, didn't you?
I did. I went to the University of Tennessee, had a big time there. Go Vols, to all the children out there.
I know I have a number of students that I've had over the years that end up at UT, and I always get a lot of good UT stories coming from there.
Oh yeah, I loved every minute of it. And so yeah, I went with a psychology degree and some couple different minors, and I came home and went directly to work at the CMA with you.
Yep. So before you kind of got into it, before you started your own stuff in the music business, who are some of your heroes? And that can be music wise, that can be business wise, whichever one.
Yeah, so many, right?
Mhm.
I would say going back, not that it all goes back to dad, but a lot of it does. My overall heroes in the industry are songwriters. For me, there's just something to be said, growing up when I would hear these artists sing songs, and at the time they didn't all write their songs. A lot of people are writing their music now, more than I think they did back then, a lot of the artists. And you hear someone sing this brilliant song, and a few of my dads that went number one, and they're these massive songs, and then I would find out the story. Who wrote this and why, and tell me all about it. And I was so intrigued with songwriting. I never got into it myself. Well, I probably have written a million songs that no one's ever going to hear, and lots of poems and interesting things like that. But I didn't push for that world. But I would say songwriters to me are the most intriguing part in the industry. When it came to heroes in the business, on the business side of things, I love watching the women in the industry, Donna Hilly and Connie Bradley and Tammy Genovese, so many women I watched running these companies from corporate to labels. And I thought if they can do it, I can do it, or I can do something similar. And they were powerful. And I thought it was fantastic. So I was always looking up to those women, how they handled themselves, what ideas, creative ideas they came up with that were so smart, so imperative to what that label or corporate company did, to build success. And I always found that heroic, to watch. I still do.
So did you have any teachers or mentors or anybody like that along the way who really helped you out or kind of guided you along the way?
Most definitely. That's a good story, actually. Growing up at school, I was voted as most likely to have a television show, and you're laughing. And also,
Because I can see
voted
it.
voted in for talks too much. So I was kind of, I would say I laughed a lot in school. I've probably gotten a little bit of trouble, not for being a bad student, but just laughing. I'm sure you have a lot of those students. I couldn't keep still, and I always wanted to have a really good time. And I sang in the choir all my years in high school. And our director, Mr. King, shout out to Mr. King, was a tough, tough teacher. He was our Bible teacher, and he was also the choir director, and he was tough. And I ended up having to write, "I will not talk in Mr. King's class" 150 times. And so we weren't off to a great start. 2 days later, I was voted in as the actually first female president of the concert choir at that school ever. And we had to become friends really fast. And all jokes aside, if I got in trouble, I had to go in his office for my study hall, which had a window that looked into where he would direct choir practice. So I was actually living the dream. I'm like drinking a Coke, feet on the table, calling my mom at work, and like back here helping direct through the window. But we ended up being so close. And to this day, he was my favorite teacher of all time. His perfectionism and dedication, I don't think you always understand as a student at that time. It's the tough teacher. But as I grew through school with him, he helped me learn how to really dive into and hone into the crafts of the things I really, really wanted to do. And he wanted us to strive for excellence if possible. And I didn't think that was very important until we went to Allstate and until I got to feel what that felt like. And I think he really set me up for doing well in life when it comes to dedication and how hard you can try to get there. It was well worth it. He's my favorite. To this day, I use his name for like passcodes.
So, I'll show you something cool maybe. What artist are you working with now?
Okay. So recently, I have taken a fairly new position with recording artist Cindy Thompson, who was on Capitol Records back in 2000. And then she took a break from the industry and stepped away. And she's coming back with something, but I'm not privy to discuss that. You'll have to have me back on to tell you about it.
That's all right.
But I am managing this process and this career and this avenue we're taking. So keep your fingers crossed. I'll have a lot to say about it. But here shortly, the cat will be out of the bag, but we're having a big time. And this is my first role in management. I guess I could say with all the jobs I've ever had, I never repeated the same job. I never went into the same thing in a different, every single job has been a completely different mix of things for me, from CMA to radio, management, entertainment liaison with startup companies. My ex-husband and I opened a restaurant and bar in Sylvan Park called Neighbors. I've done a little bit of everything, and music was always at the forefront of each thing I did, but everything's been different. I just like to learn something new every time.
Well, I brought a little show and tell for you that you can pass this story along to Cindy. Back when we were at CMA, and for the people watching, they would have artists come in and play in our atrium from time to time, and sometimes it was legends, sometimes it was up and coming artists. I can remember Eric Church, Dierks Bentley, Blake Shelton, Jason Aldean. Like, before anybody knew who they were, they would come and play. And usually, it was before cell phone cameras and social media and all that stuff. So we didn't really take a lot of pictures or anything, but they would usually like sign autographs and stuff for us. Well, I saved all that stuff from my CMA days. Okay. Like, I've got like a notebook that whenever I got that stuff, I just stuck it in there and stuff. Look at this.
Stop
Cindy
it.
Thompson autograph back when she was with Capitol Records.
That's incredible.
Saved it.
And that's when she came to CMA for her artist visit, which I put on the artist visits and had the plaques made. And it's because what I really meant to say, that was her single, and it went #1 for 3 weeks. And that's what I believe we had her come on board to sing for us for that exact reason.
Well, I still had it because I liked her so much back in the day, and I was excited when I heard that you guys were working together. And I can't wait to see what she does next and what you guys do together, because I'm sure it's going to be awesome. So, last question. You've got the ear of high school kids. You've got young people listening. What is one life lesson that you would pass on to them that you've learned?
There are so many.
There are so top many. 3 if you have to, just whatever you got.
I mean, I have something that I've been thinking a lot about lately, even talking to my 13-year-old about it. It could be to an adult, it could be to anyone, but this has been on my mind lately. Someone asked me not too long ago, are you terrified of this management position? You've never done this. How could you not be terrified in the middle? I won't say I'm middle-aged, but what if I am? What are you thinking? And I think I would pass on to all the students, it doesn't matter. No, I've never done it, but I'm about to. And I'll figure it out. So far, so great. I love everything I'm doing. I think society teaches a lot of us that if you don't have a certain degree in something, or you didn't go to school for this or that, you think you just can't go do that thing you have a passion for, because how will I do it? It's impossible. And that's just not true. You absolutely can go after and do anything you want to, but you have to lean into that passion. If you're listening to music for me is a hobby. It's actually a hobby. I love to see who's writing and who wrote what song and what's new, and I keep up with that. It's a hobby for me to do that. I actually enjoy it. And then you start digging into that. Find more people that do that hobby that you love. Talk to other teachers, get connected with what you love. It doesn't have to be what you go to school for. It doesn't have to be what your parents do. Just start doing the things you truly love to do, and you'll end up with opportunities kind of similar to what I'm doing right now. Always loved Cindy, always wanted to be in management. My daughter was too young for me to take that role for a long time, but I never walked away from wanting to do it. And here it is. So I would just say, no matter what you come from, no matter what other work you've done, keep keep leaning into what it is you love, and it'll come.
That's great advice. I tell my students all the time, if you would have told me back when we first knew each other, when we hung out on a regular basis, if you'd have told me I would end up being a history teacher, I never would have believed it, because I didn't see myself doing anything like that. And I didn't see it till I was like 30. Way past the point where they tell people that you're supposed to have it all figured out and that kind of thing. And I tell my students all the time, you don't have to have it figured out until it's time for you to figure it out. But now I'm, 14 years into this career, and I've, started the Every Kid is a Hero Foundation and done all this stuff, and I still do a little bit of music business stuff here and there with CMA, like at least once a year. And you just never know where your life's going to lead, and don't ever be afraid to like jump at it and just go.
Just go for it. I do have another short story the students might love if you want me to tell it.
Okay, go ahead.
Just following with what we're saying, just going for it. Once upon a time, I was on a board. It was called the CRS board. It was actually the Country Radio Seminar. And it was the agenda committee, actually. Take the board part off. I was on the agenda committee. And I was the youngest person on there. And I don't really know how I ended up on it, but I did. And they were going around the room saying, okay, we're going to have a panel this year at this radio seminar. And this panel we have every single year. And it's called Life of a Legend. And they said, let's go around the room and everybody say who they think it should be this year. So everybody's popping off different artists, and it got to me, and I said, well, I think George Jones should do it. It's Life of a Legend. And everyone laughed right in my face. Hard. Oh yeah, George Jones. Okay. Do you know how many years we've been doing this panel and never have we ever gotten George Jones? So, okay, next. And there I am, my first day on this, with these group of people, this committee. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I walk out and I call George Jones's wife. And I said, if I don't make this phone call, I won't ever know. But somebody said I couldn't. Worst case scenario, they're going to tell me no. But best case scenario happened. And I walked back into that room the next week. We all sat down and everyone looked at me and said, did anybody come up with anything for the panel? And I said, oh yeah, George Jones. And they all laughed at me again. And I said, no, George Jones. It's confirmed. And George Jones did the panel for the first time ever. And my father emceed or what have you for the event. And it was incredible. And I think I just tell that story to say, I could have let him laugh and thought it was ridiculous to go for it and ask, but I did. And it was a great thing. So yeah, go for it. Ask the questions, make the moves, be bold.
That's awesome. That's a great story.
Good one.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. For students, one last life lesson I'll leave you with is when you go out and you get out of high school and you get out of college and you go out into the working world, you start doing your thing. If you are even half as blessed to gain some of the friends that I've gained, you're richer than money can ever make you. And you're one of those friends. I know we don't get the chance to see each other that much anymore. We don't hang out like we used to, but we definitely spent some hours together in our youth. And I know you and a number of other people from those days that, if I ever needed anything, I could ask and you'd be right there. And same for me. If you all ever need anything, I would be right there at the drop of a hat. So look for those people, kids, when you go out in the world, because they're special and they stick with you.
You stay connected. We have for years and years, and a lot of our other friends too. So that's probably more important than anything else, really, honestly.
Absolutely. Christy, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. I can't wait to share this with my students, and it was wonderful to see you and just a pleasure to talk to you.
You too. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks for staying after school with Mr. Van Huss.